Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into something huge. It's more than just theology. You could almost call it a cosmic legal case.
It's a good way to put it.
We're looking at this ultimate challenge. How can a divine being, one described as perfectly loving and perfectly just, handle disobedience? Especially when dealing with creatures given, well, pretty volatile free will.
It really is the bedrock question in the sources we're examining. And what's fascinating is that they don't just offer belief. They lay out this incredibly detailed, almost architectural proof that spans, well, all of existence as they define it.
Right, and the stakes couldn't be higher. We're talking about the very legitimacy of the creator, the definition of love, and whether eternal peace is even, possible.
Well, exactly.
So yeah, our source material gives us this kind of blueprint. It explains how the creator got, let's use the term first Godhead figure, or just the creator sets out to prove his own nature and the absolute truth of his commandments. And he's doing this against a really fundamental challenge.
A challenge personified by the figure of Satan in these texts.
Yeah.
The conflict is stark. It's right there. Satan claims the divine commandments, the rules for living, are impossible for creatures, just flat out impossible to keep.
And the creator's position
Is the complete opposite. He insists they can be kept, that they aren't some abstract, unreachable ideal, but actually the path to, well, the greatest possible happiness for the creature.
So our mission in this deep dive is to unpack that cosmic argument. We want to go beyond just faith and look at the logical structure presented, the necessity claimed for the creator's plan.
Highlighting the clarity, the emphasis on justice, and this absolutely central role of sacrifice. Sacrifice not just as an event, but as the key to completing free will and achieving that lasting peace.
We're aiming for the core of what these sources claim about divine motivation and the, frankly, staggering cost involved in establishing a universe grounded in love.
It's quite a journey.
Okay, so to really get the solution, we need to feel the weight of the problem first. This adversarial claim, it's not just complaining about rules.
No, it's a direct hit. It's an accusation aimed at the creator's fundamental character, his moral right to rule, essentially.
Let's break down the claim itself. Satan's core point is that the commandments, love God, and the really tough one, love your neighbor as yourself, are impossible. Creatures just can't do it.
And if that's true, think about it. The whole divine order, the basis of right and wrong presented in these texts, it just crumples. It becomes arbitrary, even tyrannical.
And the creator's response isn't just, nah?
Not at all. He actively counters, saying creatures can obey. The sources use this really intimate language for it, saying the law isn't far off, it's very near you in your mouth and in your heart.
Which implies?
It implies the capacity, the knowledge, the ethical sense needed. It's built in, woven into the creature's design, not just slapped on externally. It's accessible.
Okay, but the stakes get really high when we ask, why must the commandment be keepable? What happens to the creator's character, his very definition, if Satan turns out to be right? This is the crux of the whole cosmic trial narrative.
Yeah, the sources spell out these catastrophic moral implications for the creator if the law is impossible. And they're not minor things. They strike at the very heart of what it means to be divine, as portrayed here.
Okay, let's list them. First, if the law is impossible, the creator is presented as, well, a liar.
He's claiming something is vital, life-giving, achievable the law when he supposedly knows it's a setup for failure. That obliterates trust. And trust is, pretty essential for any loving relationship, divine or otherwise.
Right. That's one. What's next?
Second, and this one carries huge weight in the legal framing of these texts, the creator would be a murderer.
A murderer? How?
Because the divine standard, as laid out, involves judgment. Those who violate the law, who oppress others, face the fire pit, the second death, which sounds like ultimate destruction. Now imagine a judge executing someone for breaking a rule they were literally incapable of following from the start.
That judge isn't upholding justice there.
They're executing based on their own flawed design. The creator would be using the law as a weapon, a pretext for destruction. It makes the whole system seem rigged.
So divine justice, in this view, has to be tied to a genuinely keepable standard. Otherwise, punishment is just cruelty.
Cruelty, malice, exactly. Which leads to the third point. The creator would be unreasonable. Commanding the impossible is, well, the definition of arbitrary power. It's tyranny, not loving guidance. A being defined as perfectly rational and loving just can't impose something inherently beyond the creature's capacity.
Makes sense. And the fourth implication.
If the commandment's impossible, then divine love itself is a sham. The sources say, point blank, if the law can't be kept, it stops being about happiness and becomes just a tool for oppression. A murder weapon is the phrase used, designed to break creatures. It would paint the creator as, frankly, sadistic, taking pleasure in failure she designed.
Wow, okay, so the creator has to prove the law is possible. But not just possible, also. Good.
Yeah.
Benevolent.
Precisely. Which brings us to the true purpose of the commandment, as presented. It's not just about avoiding these terrible implications, it's about something positive.
And the core idea seems to be that the creator is love, fundamentally. So the law is just love in action, love made practical.
That's a great way to put it. The creator, in this narrative, structured reality itself so that creatures find their greatest happiness, their deepest fulfillment, when they align with this commandment of love. Loving God, yes, but critically, loving the neighbor. The law is presented as a guide to joy, not away from it.
I found the reasoning for why the law exists really compelling, too. It's framed as protection against suffering.
Yes, the sources are stark on this. They say, when the moral law breaks down, when the commandment is ignored, what happens? Oppression by force. It's almost a physical law, they describe.
Like a vacuum being filled.
Exactly. When that moral framework disappears, the vacuum is filled by violence. The strong crush the weak. You get theft, betrayal, murder, constant fear, an endless cycle of suffering where the vulnerable have no defense, no recourse.
And the creator provides the law.
Specifically to prevent that. To shield the weak from the strong's potential for tyranny. The law is the bedrock of justice, stopping creatures from inflicting that kind of misery on each other and from suffering it themselves.
So the idea is, if the law feels heavy or burdensome, it's not the law's fault. It's the creature's own resistance, their own free will, pushing against the very structure designed for their peace and safety.
That seems to be the core argument. The creator commands nothing that is inherently impossible or life-destroying if the creature chooses to live within that intended framework of love.
And this whole situation, this huge problem, sets the stage for the absolutely massive demonstration that these sources claim had to happen next.
Yeah, the sheer scale of this challenge, this accusation against the creator, it means the solution couldn't just be cooked up later. It wasn't a plan B. The sources insist the whole strategy was laid out before creation, before time and space even got started.
Okay, this pre-creation strategy, let's unpack that. What exactly did the creator decide before anything existed needed to be proven to all creatures for all time?
According to these texts, there were 3 absolute must-proves. 3 things that had to be settled permanently to silence that adversarial claim and ultimately stabilize creation forever.
Okay, what's the first one?
First, he had to prove that creatures can keep the commandments, that it's not just a nice idea, but a practical, achievable reality for them.
Got it. Possible. What else?
Second, he had to demonstrate the truth and the reality of the commandment itself, meaning show that it actually works, that it leads to life and flourishing, not destruction, that it's objectively good.
Okay, possible and true. The third?
Third, he had to reveal the divine love embedded within the commandment, to prove definitively that the law stems from profound care and a desire for the creature's well-being, not from cruelty or a desire to control.
Possible, true, and loving. And proving these 3 things required. The main event, so to speak.
Yes. It necessitated the decree of the cross, the atonement. The sources frame this not merely as a reaction to human sin, but as the pre-planned architecture designed to address and ultimately complete the inherent instability of creaturely free will.
That connection, the cross, and completing free will feels really central. Let's dig into that. The sources say pain and suffering exist because creatures use their free will to transgress, to sin.
Right, and the implication is, if that free will remains, what it's called uncompleted or unstable,
Right.
if the creature always retains the raw capacity to choose harm over love, then creation itself will always be vulnerable, always prone to cycles of violence, rebellion, suffering.
This is a huge point. So eternal rest, that vision of a world without crime, without fear, even nature itself at peace, lion and lamb together, that can only happen if free will is somehow finished, completed, stabilized.
That's the term used, completed. And completion isn't about removing choice. It's about the creature reaching a state of moral maturity, a stability, where they genuinely, voluntarily, and permanently choose love over harm, choose cooperation over oppression.
How does that happen? What triggers that permanent shift?
The sources point to a specific understanding. It happens when creatures truly grasp the depth of divine love, when they see the cost, the sacrifice, the sheer intensity of it. That knowledge is presented as compelling a response, a genuine reciprocal love for the Creator.
And that love leads to stable obedience.
Yes. Voluntary, willing, lasting obedience. Not forced compliance, but a chosen alignment. It's described as reaching an irreversible state of moral maturity anchored in the understanding of divine love.
So the cross isn't just fixing the past, it's the primary teaching tool. The demonstration needed to catalyze this maturity across creation. It's the prerequisite for the whole experiment to actually succeed long term.
That's the framework, yes, making sure the future existence isn't constantly undermined by new rebellions.
And to drive home the need for this ultimate sacrifice, the sources talk about an earlier sort of preliminary demonstration involving the first Adam in this place called Hades.
Right, it's presented as a kind of opening act, a preview of the stakes and the consequences of lawlessness, setting the stage for the main solution.
Okay, so what was this setup? Satan, the adversary, is confined to Hades, which seems to represent a state or place where divine law has broken down. Chaos, essentially.
Yeah, a domain of lawlessness. And then the Creator places the first Adam inside that very environment.
Which sounds incredibly risky, putting your new creation right into the heart of the problem.
Strategically necessary, according to the narrative. Putting Adam there, and importantly Adam initially obeying the Creator even in that hostile place, it did two things.
Okay, what's the first?
First, it was an immediate, though temporary, proof that the commandment was keepable. Even under direct adversarial pressure, obedience was possible for a creature.
And the second function?
It forced Satan's hand. It revealed his true nature. By tempting Adam in that context, Satan exposed himself not as some reasonable critic with valid points about the law, but as fundamentally a liar and a destroyer. His opposition was shown to be rooted in malice, not reasoned disagreement.
In Hades itself, what did its existence reveal about sin?
Hades is portrayed as the natural consequence of rejecting the commandment. It is the misery that follows when law disappears. Pure violence, betrayal, fear, chaos. By placing Adam there, even briefly, the Creator made the necessity of the law starkly visible.
So sin isn't just breaking an arbitrary rule, it's choosing to live in that state of misery, that reality of oppression.
Exactly. The suffering isn't an external punishment inflicted by the Creator in this scenario. It's the inherent self-inflicted consequence of choosing lawlessness. The Hades demonstration aimed to show the law wasn't punitive, but protective, life-preserving.
But Adam ultimately failed there, right? Which then necessitates the ultimate solution.
Correct. The initial demonstration highlighted the problem and the stakes, but Adam's eventual failure under temptation proved that a more definitive, permanent solution was needed. One that could not only demonstrate the law's keepability under all conditions, but also rescue those trapped in the consequences of that failure.
Right. So the Hades scenario showed why the law was necessary, but Adam's failure meant the question of its feasibility under sustained creaturely pressure wasn't fully settled. And critically, humanity was now caught in that state of lawlessness.
So to fix both problems, prove the law and rescue creation, the second Godhead figure steps in.
He becomes what the sources call the last Adam. If the first Adam failed and pulled humanity down, the last Adam had to enter the same broken system as a creature and succeed where the first one failed.
Becoming the Word made flesh. This seems key, making the divine tangible.
Exactly. It addresses that gap, that distance. Creatures could now see the commandment lived out perfectly. In a real human body, experiencing real limitations and temptations, they could verify its truth, its beauty, its doability with their own eyes. And he didn't just teach it, he lived it perfectly. Even with all the weaknesses of being human, he defeated sin and death as one of us, essentially.
That's the claim. Not pulling rank as God, but winning the battle within the constraints of creaturehood. Which leads us straight into the core mechanism, the substitutionary atonement, the cross.
And the sources stress this wasn't just a tragic execution or a display of empathy. It was framed as a high-stakes legal and sacrificial act, expressing divine love, but planned from before the beginning.
Yes, the single, absolutely necessary transaction to legally swap the fate of the failed first Adam, and by extension, the entire human race that followed. The process described is incredibly specific, almost like a surgical procedure. It's far more than just dying for someone.
Okay, let's walk through those steps as the sources lay them out. First, the second Godhead figure becomes human, lives perfectly, obeys the first Godhead figure completely, right up to the point of death. A humiliating, painful death.
That establishes his qualification. He's the only possible substitute with no blemish, no sin of his own, the perfect offering.
Then comes the actual substitution. He takes the first Adam's sin and, crucially, the accumulated sin of all humanity onto himself. The language used is pretty shocking.
It is. It says that in the eyes of the first Godhead figure, the second Godhead figure became the embodiment of sin. He was treated as if he were the murderer, the adulterer, the thief, the liar, not just carrying the penalty, but standing in the place of the guilty, becoming the very object of divine justice.
He then takes the curse associated with sin, often symbolized by the crucifixion itself, dying on a tree. But you mentioned earlier, and the sources seem to emphasize, that the physical pain wasn't the main point of forgiveness.
Correct. While the suffering was real and horrific, the sources pinpoint the mechanism of atonement, the actual point of exchange, as the moment of abandonment.
The cry, "My God, why have you forsaken me?"
That's identified as the absolute center of it all. The sources call this abandonment by the first Godhead figure the death of abandonment, or the first death. This is the critical legal transaction.
Okay, we need to pause here. You're distinguishing this first death from the second death. Can you clarify that again? It's easy to confuse them.
Absolutely crucial distinction. The second death, as we talked about with judgment, is presented as the final, ultimate end for the unrepentant. Total destruction, annihilation of body and soul in the fire pit, complete non-existence.
Okay, annihilation. So what is the first death that happened on the cross?
The first death is spiritual separation. It's being cut off from the Creator, who is described as the source of all life, all being, all light. It's the experience of ultimate isolation and severance from the divine presence.
So on the cross, the second Godhead figure didn't experience annihilation, second death. He experienced that profound spiritual severance, that cutting off, first death.
Exactly. It's described as a cosmic rupture within the Godhead itself. The two figures, eternally unified, willingly experienced being cut off from each other. The second willingly endured the ultimate penalty of sin's spiritual abandonment so that humanity could be spared the total and eternal destruction of the second death.
Wow. Okay, so the forgiveness of sins, the redemption, is based on that internal spiritual agony, that willing separation within the Godhead, not just the nails and the spear.
That's the depth of it presented in these texts. Think again about the full penalty for sin. The second death destroys both body and soul spirit, the core of free will. So if the substitute was to truly pay the price, the sacrifice had to match that devastation. It had to involve the core of being, the will.
And the second Godhead figure was the only one with a pure, untainted free will, a perfect soul spirit.
And he offered it. He offered his own pure soul spirit, his perfect free will, along with his body. This sacrifice is portrayed as buying back humanity's corrupted free will from the judgment it deserved. He took the spiritual death, the abandonment, the cutting off from life's source so that the human spirit wouldn't face eternal annihilation.
The scale of that is just immense. It's not just paying a fine, it's submitting the very essence of uncorrupted divinity to the ultimate consequence of sin's spiritual death to rescue the corrupted essence of humanity.
And this act, this extreme demonstration, was meant to have a profound effect on anyone who witnessed it or came to understand it. When creatures see that level of love, that willingness to endure such pain and separation, the sources suggest it should compel a powerful response.
What kind of response?
A mirroring response.
Mm-hmm.
Those who grasp the love shown are expected, even obligated, to then sacrifice themselves, their own comfort, their own desires, maybe even their lives for the Creator and, crucially, for their neighbor, reflecting the pattern.
Let's revisit that comparison between the first Adam and the last Adam you mentioned. It really seems to highlight this idea of sacrificial love versus, well, selfish love.
The symmetry is stark and intentional in the narrative. The first Adam, the sources say, loved his spouse more than his Creator. Because of that misplaced love and loyalty, he disobeyed, effectively abandoning the Creator's command, and brought the first death, spiritual separation, onto himself and humanity.
And the last Adam.
The last Adam, motivated by his love for his spouse, interpreted as humanity, the church, the creation he came to save, did the opposite. He loved them so much that he willingly allowed himself to be abandoned by the first Godhead figure. He chose temporary, agonizing severance for himself to achieve permanent reconciliation and life for them.
It flips the script entirely.
Completely. It defines the kind of love the Creator values and requires, a willingness to endure profound loss, agony, separation for the sake of the beloved, putting their well-being even above one's own most fundamental connections. This demonstrated proof of love then becomes the foundation for all future relationship and obedience.
Okay, so the Creator goes to these incredible lengths to prove he's not a murderer, that the law is loving and keepable, and provides the staggering sacrifice. But then we come to judgment, the final act. And the sources insist this act, which includes destruction for some, is also an expression of divine love. That feels really counterintuitive. How can judgment be love?
It's a challenging concept, definitely. But the framework shifts here from individual salvation to the well-being of the entire creation, the cosmic community. Judgment is presented as necessary love for the sake of eternal peace and safety for the whole.
How so?
Think about it. If the Creator allowed persistent oppressors, those who refuse to stop harming others, who insist on violence, theft, cruelty, if even it, He allowed them to exist forever alongside everyone else, what happens?
Well, the suffering continues. The peace is always threatened.
Exactly. The rest of creation could never truly find rest, never be truly safe. The sources are quite clear. The whole system can't be stable as long as even one entity remains committed to disruption and harm, possessing the power to act on it. There's always a risk.
So judgment is framed as love for the potential victims, for the majority who just want to live in peace.
That's precisely the argument. Removing the persistent, unrepentant source of oppression is portrayed as the ultimate act of protective love towards the rest of creation that desires harmony and security. It's ensuring the eternal safety of the many by dealing decisively with the few who refuse peace.
But does this mean the Creator stops loving the oppressor? Does His love have limits?
This is where the sources make a careful distinction. They maintain the Creator loves all His creatures, fundamentally, even those who choose sin, who hate His rule, who inflict pain. They use analogies like King David mourning his rebellious, destructive son Absalom.
Yeah.
The love is still there, even amidst the heartbreak and the necessity of consequences.
And they mention the tyrant of Tyre, often seen as Satan, being created beautiful and wise. So the initial potential was loved.
Right, the love is inherent to the Creator's nature towards His creation. However, the expression of that love and the ultimate outcome necessarily differs based on the creature's choices regarding His rule, His law of love.
Okay, so how does that expression differ?
For those who accept the Creator's love, embrace His rule, and choose to love others, He expresses His love through eternal life, relationship, blessing. But for those who fundamentally reject His rule, who insist on their right to oppress, they are essentially rejecting the entire framework of life and love He offers.
So for them,
The only logical way out of His loving governance, which they refuse, is non-existence, extinction. They don't want His life, His rules, His peace. The only alternative to being in His loving order is to be out of existence altogether.
which brings us back to the fire pit, the second death.
Yes, but it's not instant annihilation upon rejection. Justice demands satisfaction first. Before being returned to non-existence, those who rejected love and inflicted harm must, according to the sources, pay the price for the suffering they caused. This happens in the fire pit, with the punishment fitting the crime measure for measure.
So there's a period of retributive justice first.
That's how it's described. A settling of accounts based on their actions. Then comes the second death, the complete and final end. Body and soul spirit, the center of their rebellious free will, cease to exist. They are removed entirely.
Ensuring they can never harm anyone again.
It's absolute finality. The stated goal is eternal rest and security for the redeemed creation. The destruction ensures that the source of persistent, willful disruption is permanently gone. There's even stark language suggesting that those who fundamentally reject the peace offered are ultimately viewed as refuse, garbage to be disposed of, recycled back to nothingness after justice is served.
It's a very severe conclusion.
It is. But within this framework, it's presented not as arbitrary cruelty, but as the necessary, if grim, act of cosmic sanitation required to guarantee permanent peace and safety for the vast majority who chose the path of love, the ultimate protection for the loving community.
Okay, so we've seen the problem, the sacrifice, the justice. Let's circle back to the root issue this whole cosmic drama was designed to solve, that unstable free will. The sources seem pretty pessimistic about the creature's baseline state.
They are quite sober about it, yeah. The underlying assumption is that any creature whose free will hasn't been completed, who still possesses the raw capacity to choose self over love, harm over help, will, given enough time and opportunity, eventually make the wrong choice. The potential to stray is universal.
It's not just a human problem, then.
Not exclusively. The implication is that all free will, unless anchored and completed by that profound understanding of divine love, is inherently prone to drifting. It's why the lost sheep analogy is applied so broadly. In the grand scheme, everyone, potentially even angels according to some interpretations within these sources, starts out as capable of becoming lost.
So the cross wasn't just for humans who had already fallen, it was a lesson for everyone, a preventative measure almost.
A universal demonstration, absolutely. It was meant to show all beings across all realms the lengths the Creator would go to, that He would pursue them with that same sacrificial love, even into agony should they stray. It demonstrates his unwavering commitment to his creatures.
Which addresses the 99 sheep, or the elder brother figures, those who perhaps didn't see themselves as lost.
Exactly. They, the ones who hadn't rebelled or felt secure in their own faithfulness, needed to witness the cross. Why? To grasp the sheer depth of the Father's love for the lost? Yes, but also love for them. Seeing that ultimate sacrifice prevents future doubt, future questioning of the Creator's character, his justice, his commitment.
So it stabilizes their free will too, by providing this undeniable proof of love that inoculates them against questioning God and potentially rebelling later.
That's the idea. It completes free will universally, providing the anchor of understood love, even for those who weren't actively rebelling at the time.
Okay, now for those who did fall, primarily humanity, the atonement is available. Forgiveness is offered. But it's not automatic, right? There are conditions.
Definitely not automatic. It's available to all who repent, meaning turn away from their old ways and choose to obey the second Godhead figure. But the application of that forgiveness is very specific. It hinges on relationship.
Which brings us to this concept of friendship with the second Godhead figure.
Right. Forgiveness is applied only to his friends. And friendship, in this context, isn't passive affection. It's defined explicitly by action, by commitment.
You are my friends if you do what I command you. That's pretty direct.
It links love and law inescapably. If you want to benefit from the sacrifice, the legal exchange made on the cross, you have to align yourself with the standards, the commands of the one who made it possible. You join his mission, his way of life.
And the core command that defines this friendship, connecting the cross to daily life.
Love one another as I have loved you. That's the operational heart of it. Reflect the sacrificial love you received.
And this is tied directly to receiving forgiveness.
Intrinsically, the sources are blunt. If you refuse to forgive others, your brother or sister, the first Godhead figure won't forgive you. To be a recipient of radical forgiveness, you must become a conduit of it. You have to practice the same kind of restorative, neighbor-focused love.
Okay, but this sounds incredibly difficult. If creaturely free will is inherently flawed, prone to selfishness and failure, how can anyone actually live up to that command? Love sacrificially, forgive constantly. Aren't we right back where we started, with Satan saying the commandment is impossible?
That's the perfect question, and it highlights the tension the sources deliberately set up and then resolve. They agree with the premise.
Yep.
Creatures, left to their own devices, cannot perfectly initiate or sustain this kind of love and obedience. Self-effort isn't enough. It confirms the initial flaw in uncompleted free will. Love and life, they state, originate only with the Creator.
So the Creator has to act first, which he did on the cross, showing love. That allows a response. But how does the creature bridge the gap between seeing the love and actually doing the love, keeping the law?
That's the role of the third Godhead figure, the Holy Spirit. This is the crucial mechanism of the New Covenant. For those who accept the terms forgiveness through the Son's sacrifice and a commitment to follow his commands, the Holy Spirit is given to them.
And the Spirit does what?
The Spirit solves the impossible law problem. It shifts the burden from pure self-effort to divine empowerment. The Spirit enables believers to actually keep the commandments by, as the texts say, writing the law on their hearts and minds. It becomes an internal reality, not just an external rule.
So the final irrefutable proof that the law is keepable isn't just the one perfect example of the second Godhead figure. It's the ongoing existence of changed creatures.
Exactly. That's the ultimate evidence presented to close the cosmic case. The proof lies in the first fruits. These are the witnesses, the martyrs, those resurrected or transformed. They are living, breathing examples of flawed creatures who, empowered by the Spirit, do keep the commandments. They love God and neighbor, sometimes even to the point of death, demonstrating the law's achievability through divine grace.
And when enough of these witnesses exist, when that predetermined number is reached,
the demonstration is complete. The proof is undeniable. The Creator's character is vindicated, the law is validated, the adversary's claim is silenced.
And that sets the stage for the final judgment we discussed,
Right.
using that now proven commandment as the standard.
Precisely. Judgment against those who persistently refuse that love and continue to oppress others. And the ultimate outcome of this vast, intricate plan. Eternal life for the redeemed, a secure, stable existence, described as being like the angels, never facing death again, and the final completion of the entire creation project and a state of everlasting rest and peace. #outro.
Wow. That really was a deep dive. Well, we've covered a massive theological and legal structure today. To try and summarize, the core argument from these sources is that the entire story of creation, suffering, sacrifice, and redemption is presented as one immense, carefully orchestrated demonstration.
A self-sacrificial demonstration of divine love, specifically designed to answer that core challenge, that the Creator's law was unjust or impossible, and the goal was to validate the Creator's character and, in doing so, complete the free will of creatures.
Moving them from that unstable state where sin was always a looming possibility to a place of stable, voluntary, loving obedience. And the linchpin is that relationship. Creatures obey because they come to love the Creator, and they love Him because He first proved His love through that staggering sacrifice, the Son being willingly abandoned by the Father.
That connection is fundamental. And what really emerges is how love and justice aren't opposites in this framework. They're intertwined. Justice creates the safe space for love to flourish sustainably, and love provides the ultimate standard for what true justice looks like.
It paints a picture of peace not just as a gift, but as something legally secured, eternally guaranteed, at immense cost.
It does. And if you really absorb the implications of this whole narrative, it leaves you with a pretty challenging thought to chew on. If the Creator, the first Godhead figure, was willing to endure separation from the second Godhead figure, being cut off from Himself, essentially all to prove that love is viable and the commandment achievable, what does that imply about the kind of love He then asks us to show, especially towards those we find difficult, undeserving, even hostile, towards our neighbor?
It suggests that the standard is incredibly high. That true, completed love, the kind that fulfills the commandment and leads to that final rest, might require us to be willing to endure our own forms of separation, pain, maybe even loss for the sake of others, mirroring, in our own small way, that ultimate act of abandonment on the cross.
It implies adopting that same, almost impossibly high standard of sacrificial love, which, according to the sources, is only possible through the empowerment of the Spirit.
A standard required for eternal peace, secured at an infinite price. That's a lot to think about.
It certainly is.
Well, thank you for walking us through these really dense and complex source materials today. It's been illuminating.
It was my pleasure. A fascinating framework to explore.
For the deep dive, thanks for listening. We'll be back next time with another set of sources to unpack.